Hey friend, I'm really glad you're here. Today we're going to explore one of the most mysterious and mind-bending stories ever told. It's got aliens, secret conversations, and a crash landing that may have revealed more than anyone was ready for. This isn't just about UFOs in the sky. It's about what those strange encounters might mean for life, death, and our place in the universe. So grab a drink, get comfy, and stick with me, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see everything. There are stories, strange ones, about beings that don't breathe like we do but are somehow still alive. There are tales of flying discs that crash during storms, only to be quickly covered up and forgotten by the public. You've probably heard the name Roswell. Maybe you've seen old photos of shiny metal debris, or read about shadowy government meetings that were never officially confirmed. But beyond all those rumors and documentaries, there's a lesser-known piece of the story, a secret conversation between a human and an extraterrestrial being. And what was said during that exchange? If it's true, it could turn our entire understanding of life, and even death, completely upside down. Now, let me introduce you to a name that's familiar to many researchers in Europe who study UFOs and the unknown, Maximilien de la Fayet. For over 50 years, he's written about everything from pop culture to cutting-edge science. But what made him stand out were his bold claims about aliens and their hidden links to Earth. According to him, what we call flying saucers aren't just advanced spaceships. He said they're multidimensional machines that can travel not just through space, but through time itself. Even more surprising, he believed the so-called little gray aliens, those pale, emotionless beings with giant black eyes, aren't even alive in the way we are. He said they're artificial creations, organic robots built to carry out missions far beyond our planet, able to endure places we couldn't even imagine surviving in. So where did he get these wild ideas? That's where it gets really interesting. Maximilian claimed he was there, right in the middle of it all, during the infamous Roswell incident back in 1947. According to him, he wasn't just a bystander. He was one of the scientists who made direct contact with the being found at the crash site. Let's go back to that summer. The United States was still recovering from World War II. In New Mexico, the White Sands Missile Range had become a testing ground for powerful rockets, many of them based on German V-2 technology brought over after the war. Then, on the night of July 4th, as lightning lit up the sky, something unexpected appeared on radar. At 9 p.m., a radar operator at White Sands spotted something strange, a glowing object flying incredibly fast, faster than anything they'd seen before. Just a few minutes later, another signal was detected from the Roswell Air Base. At the time, with Cold War tensions rising, any unidentified object in the sky was taken seriously, very seriously. Within minutes, fighter jets were launched. The pilots were sent to intercept whatever it was that had appeared out of nowhere. But when they got there, what they saw was not a Soviet aircraft or a balloon. It was something completely unfamiliar, something that didn't match any known technology. And then, silence. A crash, followed by one of the most carefully controlled and controversial cover-ups in modern history. Maximilian later revealed that what was found at that crash site wasn't just a broken machine, it was a message, a being. And according to him, the things this visitor said to the scientists who were there about life, time, and even what happens after death were unlike anything ever recorded. Stick around, because we're only just getting started. What happened next might be the key to a truth that's been hidden from all of us for far too long. Not long after World War II, something strange and unexplainable happened in the skies above the southwestern United States. Pilots flying a Lockheed F-80 Shooting Star, one of the fastest jet fighters of its time, reported seeing a mysterious object in the air. It didn't act like anything they'd ever seen before. It vanished suddenly from sight, only to reappear seconds later, but incredibly far away, as if it had jumped across the sky in an instant. What made it even more bizarre was that it made no sound, left behind no trail of smoke or vapor, and moved in ways that didn't follow the normal rules of physics. The F-80 could reach speeds of nearly 933 kilometers per hour, but the pilots agreed. Whatever they were chasing was far beyond anything made by humans. Then, just a few days later, on the morning of July 7, 1947, a quiet rancher named Mac Brazel made a surprising discovery. He lived on a remote piece of land near Roswell, New Mexico. While checking on his sheep after a recent storm, he came across strange pieces of wreckage scattered all over the fields. The material wasn't like anything he'd ever touched before. It was paper-thin, almost weightless, and couldn't be cut, burned, or torn. The most astonishing part was that if you bent or crumpled it, it would instantly return to its original shape, like it was alive. Scientists today call that shape memory metal, but back then, that kind of technology didn't even exist. Word spread fast. On July 8th, just a day later, officials at Roswell Army Airfield made a shocking public announcement. They had recovered what they called a flying disc from the debris. Newspapers picked up the story immediately. It made front-page headlines. People across the country were stunned. Could this really be proof of something from another world? But then, something strange happened. Only 6 hours after the announcement, the military suddenly changed their story. At a press conference, they said it wasn't a flying disc at all. It was just a weather balloon that had crashed. Reporters were confused. Radio broadcasts were edited. Stories disappeared from the papers. And the people who had originally been involved, they stopped talking. It was as if a giant curtain had been pulled over the truth. But not everyone was willing to accept the new version of events. More than 30 years later, in 1978, an experienced physicist named Robert Wood began looking into the case again. He had worked for major defense contractors like Douglas Aircraft and McDonnell Douglas, companies responsible for building some of the most advanced aircraft in the U.S. military. But what most people didn't know was that back in 1968, his company had secretly funded a $5 million investigation into mysterious aerial sightings. At the heart of that study was Roswell. Robert realized that if he was going to uncover the truth, he would need help. That's when he teamed up with Stanton Friedman, a brilliant physicist who had a deep interest in unidentified flying objects. Together, they started tracking down witnesses, collecting testimonies, and digging through old records. That same year, Friedman met a man who would change everything, Major Jesse Marcel. Marcel had been an intelligence officer with the U.S. Air Force in 1947, and he was the very first military official to arrive at the crash site near Roswell. In his own words, what he saw there wasn't just a balloon. He said the materials were far too advanced to be from Earth. Decades later, he still couldn't explain what he had found. Friedman also found another key witness, Colonel Thomas Dubose. Dubose had attended the original press conference in 1947. He admitted that the photos released to the public of a weather balloon were staged. The real wreckage had been quickly taken away and hidden. Then came another unexpected voice. Glenn Dennis worked at a funeral home in Roswell. On the same day the crash was reported, he received a strange phone call from the Army. They urgently requested 3 small, child-sized metal coffins. When he brought them to the base, he saw a flurry of military activity and a heavy feeling of secrecy. Later, a nurse he knew confided in him. She said she had helped examine the bodies recovered from the wreckage, and they were not human. She described the beings as small, with thin limbs, grayish skin, and large, black, unblinking eyes. They gave off a strange smell, and nothing about them resembled anything from Earth. Friedman didn't stop with stories. He began creating maps, timelines, and even potential flight paths, comparing eyewitness accounts with declassified military documents that had only been released years later. The patterns were chilling. He concluded that the crash hadn't happened in just one spot. Whatever the object was, it had likely broken apart in the sky. A second crash site was found just kilometers away from the first. But the most shocking claim was still to come. According to some witnesses, the military didn't just find pieces of strange metal. They also recovered 3 beings. 2 were dead, but 1 had survived. This being, unlike anything anyone had ever seen, was small and frail, with pale skin and those same unblinking dark eyes. It didn't speak. It barely moved, but it didn't seem afraid. Medical staff were baffled. The creature had a heartbeat, but no signs of breathing. It didn't eat. It didn't sleep, yet it was clearly alive. Things became even stranger. An officer at Walker Air Force Base Hospital later said that those who came into close contact with the creature began to experience something odd. They started hearing thoughts. Words, pictures, and feelings would suddenly appear in their minds, as if the being was communicating directly into their consciousness. At first, they thought it was just stress, but when more people started having the same experiences, the government brought in a team of specialists. This began what may have been the first attempt at communication between humans and an alien life form. Scientists tried using machines to interpret sounds and signals, but the being didn't respond in the way they expected. Instead of words, it sent ideas, images, emotions, and concepts that humans struggled to understand. At one point, a researcher asked, "If you're not alive in the way we understand, why can we see you?" The creature responded, "You see a form because your mind needs one, but we are not physical life forms. We don't breathe. We don't eat. We don't feel pain. We only borrow physical shapes to visit your reality." Some of the scientists were overwhelmed. They had spent their careers believing that life meant biology, organs, cells, breathing. This being challenged everything. One doctor asked if it felt grief for its dead companions. The being answered simply, "Death is not real." These weren't just words. They were truths that deeply shook those who heard them. The meetings continued for weeks. Every time, the being shared new fragments of thought, sometimes like vivid dreams, sometimes like sudden realizations. One doctor kept a journal. He wrote, "It doesn't feel like I'm learning something new. It feels like I'm remembering something I always knew." One of the most incredible things the being said was this: humans are not originally from Earth. Our souls come from other dimensions, but we've forgotten who we are. Each lifetime on Earth is like a dream. We're caught in a cycle of forgetting, reincarnating again and again, trapped in a reality that isn't real. "You live in an illusion," the being said, "a dream made of flesh and time." The scientists were torn. Some wanted to continue. Others were terrified, not of the creature, but of the truth. What would happen if everyone knew that life, death, and even reality itself were illusions? Eventually, the government shut the project down. The being was moved to a secure location. All records of the communication were classified. The public was told nothing. Roswell became a rumor, a footnote in history, surrounded by conspiracy theories. But those who were there, those who saw, heard, and felt something impossible, they were never the same. Years later, a retired scientist broke his silence in an anonymous interview. "I can't prove anything," he said. "The evidence is gone, but I know what I saw. I know what I felt. We are not alone. And more importantly, we are not what we think we are." So, if this being was telling the truth, if our souls are eternal, and this life is only a temporary experience, then what does that mean for you? Would you still live the same way? Would you still be afraid of death? Maybe it's time we stopped looking at the sky in fear and started looking with hope. Maybe we aren't just humans, but travelers of light, briefly visiting a world of matter and time, waiting to wake up and remember who we truly are.